episode of Missional Mamas. I am so glad that you're here. I am really excited for what I'm putting together and some of the interviews that I've been doing lately. And in between all of the interviews, I've been doing these little solo episodes. So this is one of them. So welcome. If you're new here, Missional Mamas is a podcast where we mostly interview mums that are missional in some way, that are from around the world. They might be even just in my city, but mums that have a desire to love Jesus with all their hearts, but also love God and make God known. To share Jesus with people, to love their kids and love those around them, and just in some way they are living a missional life. And so it is absolutely my beautiful privilege to interview these mums and to share their stories and to ask them all sorts of incredible questions and hear just their perspective and their wisdom. It is so beautiful. I love it. But in between, I share a little bit about my journey as being missionary kid, and then mum on the field, and now mum in Australia, but wanting to live a missional life and trying to figure out how that looks. And I am failing all the time, but I am sharing some of my journey and sharing, I guess, some of my failures as well, but what I'm learning and what I am enjoying about it. And yeah, I hope that this blesses you. If it's blessed you, please like and share and subscribe and all of the things. Share it with a mum that needs it. So today is, I wasn't planning on recording today, but I am going to do this episode because it's a bit timely, and I've been thinking about this for a bit over a week, and I think that I kind of need to do it, and I am not sure how it's going to go, but it's something really important, and it's really important to my heart, and so it's quite serious, and it's something that's going on in the world right now, that I really just wanted to talk about and kind of share a little bit of my story. And it is, again, with the hope that it encourages you. But right now, I feel like maybe if you're not on the internet very much, you might not have seen. And maybe if you're not in that world at all, then you might not have seen. But there has been a very big, kind of quite public situation recently within the charismatic church, mostly in the States, with Bethel Church, with a couple of different people, namely Todd White and Shawn Bolz, if those names mean anything to you. And for me personally, it's not like I was shocked by this. I actually found out about some of this a little while ago. I've been following some of the situations there and some of the victims that have come and spoke out, some of the stories that have been shared. I've been following for quite a while, like almost just over a year actually, and sort of following where I guess this like chain of events has sort of started, with Mike Bickle and IHOP, Ravi Zacharias, like a couple of different really big names have been exposed, and for the sinful, horrible, like lives that they've been leading, like this double life. And I don't really need to share with you exactly what the situations were, because I feel like either you know, or you don't know, and it's not very important. For this, that's not my role. I'm not trying to talk about it in further detail. I'm not trying to bring a whole lot more to that. If you want to, you can go and look it up. But that's the kind of, we've been a bit adjacent to that world for a little while. Even though we've been going to a Baptist church and then a Vineyard church, and here in Australia it's very removed from, I guess, a lot of that. We're still in that kind of, I guess, in that similar lane, or adjacent to that charismatic culture. And so for us, it's been really, really sad to see so many people that have been led astray. I think that's the sadness for us. So many churches that have put people up on a pedestal and have really suffered the consequences of putting a person having a celebrity culture. That's been really, really sad for us. And so that, as well as just, it's led a lot of people away from the Lord. Seeing someone who has been highly regarded and looked at in the church as so incredible and so, like perfect, right? And they can do no wrong, and they're the big prophetic person, or whatever it might be. They've been looked up to, and that's actually led to quite a lot of damage when it all comes crumbling down. And I think that's so wrong, because I know that it's like human nature to do that, right? Like, we want a celebrity, we want a leader, we want a person up the front who's kind of doing it all right, but that's way too much to put on a person. And unfortunately, like, you're not putting God at the center, you're putting that person at the center. And so inevitably this happens. But I think God is doing something so much bigger than just saying, like, just talking about the celebrity culture aspect. I think it's really about something bigger than that, and it's about the prophetic culture, and the way that we have really just relied on people to hear from God instead of actually hearing from God. And that, that makes me really, really sad. So I guess I wanted to just frame some of this, that it's not just cancel culture, and it's not just gossip. It's so much bigger than that. I think what Mike Winger, if you want, actually, I think that is like the source. That's where you should go if you want to look into any of this further. Mike Winger is a very godly man who has been exposing a lot of these people over the last year or so, or maybe 2 years. A number of different big leaders he's looked into, and it's really that people have come to him. It's not that he has like sought this out. He's been a YouTube Bible teacher for many years. He's had this YouTube platform. He just does like 10 questions every Friday. He does these beautiful streams where he just answers people's questions biblically. He encourages people to just think about things biblically. I've been watching him for years, like enjoying a lot of his teachings. He does, like, he's covered a whole lot of these topics, right? He's not a discernment ministry platform, right? He doesn't get money from any of these exposure videos. He's, I love it. Go and look him up if you're interested in like the credible source material, right? But really, I think the Lord is doing something to strengthen the church, to not just let us be content and complacent with relying on people rather than God, and putting like a person at the front instead of Jesus at the center. But also, like, the way that we do the gifts of the Spirit, and the way that we have these beautiful gifts that are so necessary and so beautiful when used in a biblical way, and the way that the Lord has created them to be. But so often I think we misuse them. And I think that's always going to happen. And I think it's no reason to walk away from the gifts. So if you're here and you're like, well, I'm a cessationist, I disagree, and that's where I am at. If you are like, I'm charismatic and I believe in the gifts, like, I'm continuationist, but I'm very cautious and very nervous about the church using them, and I've seen the detriments of people using them incorrectly, or just like in excess and in extremes. And I'm like, I get it. Like, I fully understand that point of view. And you read 1st and 2nd Corinthians, like the Corinthian church is the best example of, yes, like people using them incorrectly, and Paul challenging them and saying like, hey, that's not okay. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. But I think if we throw the baby out with the bathwater, then it's very disappointing, because those gifts bring a beauty to the church and build up the church when used correctly. The Lord is doing a lot in the earth right now, and a lot that would not be done without the power of the Holy Spirit coming and changing people's hearts, changing people's lives, healing people, and doing a mighty work, right? So I really believe that God is still at work, still a miracle working God. But I do want to just talk about some of this stuff with listening to people and giving prophetic words. And I think there's something that needs to change around our culture. And so I just wrote down a few notes, and I just wanted to share actually some of my story. And I think sometimes it would be a lot easier to avoid the gifts, but I want you to walk away encouraged, and know that, like, I did not walk away from the gifts, and I love to walk in hearing from the Lord, walk in healing, and walk in, like, however the Lord wants to move. Like, I'm open for that, but I want to do it in a way that's biblical. So I actually grew up in like a Baptist missionary home, that we didn't really ever talk about the gifts of the Spirit. Actually, I really don't know. I think my mum has probably shifted on some of that, but I would say that growing up was fairly cessationist household. And I think out of caution, I think from nothing other than caution, and having maybe seen some of that used in excess, or used in, not a great way. And when I was 15, I remember I was like at boarding school and started to encounter the Holy Spirit, and started to, it was after I got baptized, and I started to have these like crazy encounters with the Lord. I was having visions, I was having ridiculous encounters that are still like just imprinted on my mind and my heart. Like, it really shaped who I am today. But I had no grid for it, none at all. And I think a lot of it kind of scared me, and I was very heavily reliant on others to explain some of this stuff to me. Thank goodness for some beautiful dear friends, mostly like YWAM missionary kids, that would try to explain stuff to me. It was beautiful. And I remember feeling very like out of my depth, but in just awe, and being like, wow, like this is so cool. And I think the more that I when I come back to Australia, I started to have these chats with people about the gifts of the Spirit. And I was torn, because I went to a Baptist church, but they were quite charismatic leaning, where it was not very dramatic and up the front, but there was a very beautiful culture of like growing and training people in these gifts, but not doing it in a crazy over the top way. And I loved that. But then I actually had all these friends that were very cessationist from like Sydney Anglican churches. And I remember having these conversations with people saying, oh yeah, God doesn't speak anymore. Like, we have the Bible, why would he need to speak? And my heart just being like so broken for that. And just being like so confused and thinking like, why does anyone think that? But it was a long journey of me like wrestling through what I believe and what's biblical, like reading the scriptures for myself and delving into what church fathers and church history was like what they taught, and what the beliefs were, in the first and second century, like what that early church really believed about the gifts, and then seeing like how it's been throughout history, and that really, I think this idea of the gifts not being for today is quite a modern, not invention, but quite a modern belief. And so yeah, that's a little bit of my journey in kind of discovering the gifts and growing in them, and growing in like learning to hear the Lord, of the voice of the Lord, and what that means for my heart and my walk with him. But when I was kind of discovering all of this stuff, I was listening to a girl, I can't remember her name now. Her name was Amy something, and I think she was just like a YWAM teacher, and she had all these podcasts. So I was listening to podcasts like way before podcasts were even like really, I mean, they were a thing, but I mean, if you asked just everyone, but most people would be like, what's a podcast? But I was listening to these little YWAM podcasts to just learn as much as I could. And I remember her talking about this guy, Shawn Bolz, who she'd gone to ministry college with. And as I watched some of those movies about like Finger of God, and like that Darren Wilson had produced, right? And I was I was kind of, because I wasn't in the States, it was a little bit different. It's different here. And I wasn't going to a very charismatic church here. But sometimes I would go to like conferences and things that were put on by a very charismatic church here in Sydney. And one day, my friend and I went to one of these conferences. And normally they actually had Bill Johnson come out for these conferences. And the year that I went, they didn't have Bill Johnson come out. They had Shawn Bolz come out. And I remember being like blown away. And I'm sitting there, I'm like this 19-year-old kid. I'm desperate for a word from the Lord. I'm desperate for like direction in my life. Like 19, you're so ready for like, what am I going to do with my life? I was in the middle of like, what should I keep studying at uni? What should I do? Blah, 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 all of those things. And I am sitting in like the third row, and Shawn Bolz is up the front, and he's giving these words of knowledge, and I am just like lapping it up. I'm like so interested, and I am desperate, and I'm praying, Lord, I want confirmation on what I'm supposed to do next. I just want him to give me a word. Lord, if you see me, if you know me, I want a word. I want that. I was so hungry. I was so hungry for a word. And he calls out my name, like Rebecca, and then he said something about, is there a Rebecca who works at a pool? And at the time I was a lifeguard at a pool. And so I'm like, heck yeah, that's me. I'm like, God, like you've seen me, you know me. Oh my goodness, like, wow. And I go to put my hand up, and then the girl directly in front of me puts her hand up. And I go, what? And I got so uncomfortable suddenly. And I was like, so like aware. And then he said something else. I think there was like another thing. Maybe he said like, oh, you're a swim instructor. And I was like, oh, I'm not a swim instructor. Like, I'm a lifeguard. I used to be a swim instructor like a while ago, but I'm not anymore. And all I do is lifeguard. And I was like, oh. And then he said like one other thing, or he gave like some word for her, and to her it like fit completely with her last name. It was correct for her, like correct. I can't remember it exactly because it wasn't for me. And I remember feeling so let down and so crushed and so like, oh, God, I was asking for that. And it's like, it wasn't just that, oh, a few other people in the room got things. It was like, it was so close to being me, and it was the person in front of me. It was like so close, right? I think that was, for some reason, that really got me. And I was like deflated the rest of the day, which, don't judge me. I mean, I judge myself now, but don't judge me. I was 19. I was very young. And I wasn't stupid. I was just hungry. I was really, really hungry for a word from the Lord, but I let it be about wanting that word. I let it be all about, like I want to hear from the prophet, right? And that's, as I look back and I just think like how silly, and I look back, and now with the knowledge of, for those of you that don't know, Shawn Bolz has been accused of data mining. So he gets all of his prophetic words and words of knowledge from Facebook and the internet, and finds what he can. And I realize now, I go back and all my social media was all on private. Like I was very strict about not letting people see my information. A lot of my Instagram stuff was private, like as soon as you could have things privately. I didn't have like lots of information about me readily available. And I never checked into events. Like that wasn't something I did. And so, but that was how he was getting a lot of these words of knowledge. Now I don't know if he's like, it's not my place to judge whether that was like occasionally he did that or everything he ever did was fraudulent and completely fake. I don't know. But what I do know is that deflation, the Lord actually used, and he used it to teach me something, and it was amazing. That lunchtime at the conference, so that happened in the morning, and at lunch I went with my friend to their place, and I had a whole lot of I think we had 2 hours or something, and while my friend was off doing something, I had just a whole lot of time to sit on the couch and process for myself. And I remember sitting there and just praying and being like, Lord, what was that about? What are you doing? I felt almost hurt, that it had been so close. And I was like, why did she even have to be sitting right near me like that? I don't know why. It was it was personal, And I think it was. I think in the end, it was the Lord needed to really get my attention. Because what I felt when I went back to process all of this was the Lord just so gently reminded me that I do not need to hear a word of the Lord from the big guy up on stage or from somebody else, because I can hear from the Lord. I can read the scriptures. I can feel that peace. And I have heard him give me very specific words. I have heard his voice. I know what it sounds like. I know the Lord. And that comes from relationship, not just getting something through somebody else. And I felt this you know how to hear my voice. Why are you looking to somebody else for that? And why are you trying to steal somebody else's calling or somebody else's word? It was almost just this conviction of stop looking to them. That's not important, but also a correction and a reminder of his love and his he just held me in that you can hear my voice for yourself. You don't need somebody else. And I think that conviction was something that grew me so distinctly, and it really changed how I viewed the prophetic. It changed, and it didn't make me be oh, I don't believe any of this stuff from people up the front, but it definitely made me see it for what it is. Yes, can be the Lord, and can be to build faith, and to be, to really to call out people that the Lord wants to change and move in their lives, and can be incredible. I've seen it done really, really well. And it can be incredibly powerful, a way for the Lord to move. But it made me realize that that's, you need discernment, and that's not his main method. It's not us chasing a conference and chasing down this big prophet that knows and hears from the Lord. That's, we're not, I'm not a Catholic. I don't just see that the Pope has the power to hear from God or the power to make all of the decisions. It's a personal relationship that we have with the Lord, and it's beautiful. And he teaches us how to. John 10 says that my sheep hear my voice. And so we are training and we're learning constantly how to hear his voice. And I think if we become so spiritually reliant on somebody else, and if we don't walk with Jesus daily, that's what can happen. It can be so easy to outsource that and to really just rely on somebody else to have that big word for us, because actually doing the day in, day out, doing the trenches with the Lord, doing the hard seasons where it feels like he's nowhere to be found, or doing the mundane, the ordinary, everyday, being a mom, doing it with the Lord, that's hard. It's so much easier to just get a big word and for that to sustain you. But actually, we need our daily bread. We need to go to him every single day and walk with Jesus and read his word every single day. In the seasons where it's uncertain, that's when I'm most tempted to rely on somebody else. During the season where we were waiting, when we first moved back from Mexico and we were waiting for what was next and for the Lord to make it clear, that was when I was so tempted to just rely on somebody else. And I think if somebody had given me a big word during that, it would have been really hard for me to discern clearly, and for me to discern without the emotion, because I was so desperate, right? I was so desperate for an answer. And I think that sometimes the enemy knows that. But also I think we need to be on guard. We need to not be so used to relying on somebody else, but testing everything, testing it against scripture, testing it against our situation and the context, and looking to someone's character. Who's that person that's given you that word? What's their character like? What's, discerning for yourself, and not just expecting from somebody else or relying on somebody else, or just swallowing it whole. Someone gives you a prophetic word and you just go, yes, absolutely. It's so important to discern. And I think we learned that, we had, when we were living in Mexico and we were trying to discern where we were going to move to next, because we knew that wasn't permanent, and where we've got all of these words that people have actually spoken to us, prophetic words, and we're going, well, we're not just taking those prophetic words and just running with them. We spent months actually in a season of discernment, and it took us a long time to actually come to both, with Andy and myself, into alignment with each other. And once we were in alignment with each other, we actually took that then to our leadership and asked them to pray through it, and got them to kind of say, yeah, we think this is the right thing. This is from the Lord. But it was a really long process, actually, of back and forth, of us kind of being on very different pages, and then having to take it back to the Lord and swapping our positions, so it wasn't even he thought we were going to be in one place, I thought we were going to be in another place, and it just was, and then those things still haven't actually come to fruition. We are trusting that the Lord helped us to discern correctly, and that is what we're working towards in the future, and that it's all in God's timing, not ours, but I learned really a lot to just not rely on somebody else, but also not to let the emotions of that season of waiting, of uncertainty, dictate what I do, and acting out of this urgency, but really grounding myself in the Lord and in his presence and in his word, and really letting his timing unfold. And I listen a lot to the Remnant Radio guys. They're a YouTube podcast. They're great. They're all about theology and the gifts of the Spirit. And they often say about prophecy should be to either bring to your attention something that you were not thinking about for you to then pray about, or to confirm something that you were already praying about. So it should never be someone gives a word and you just do it. It should always be it should be part of the discernment process, part of your process with the Lord. And so I guess I just wanted to encourage you, because I know that a lot of you have probably seen some of the stuff that's going on, and are probably, I guess, disheartened by it, as I was. I wasn't particularly disheartened recently, although, because I found out about Shawn Bolz a while ago, just over a year ago. And I wasn't particularly disappointed in terms of, I never really had this, wow kind of thing. But it's just very sad, and it's very disappointing for those that, he isn't just, his false words have actually ruined some people's lives. And that's really, really saddening and disappointing. I think recently my disappointment has been with how some of the bigger charismatic churches have handled finding out about this, and the culture Mike Winger describes it as cover-up culture, and just seeing that the culture is really to defend your own and to cover it up and to kind of hide any of the mistakes and not to actually bring it forward and execute church discipline in a correct way. And I know that, like, we could get into this another episode, I guess. There is so much to be said about ministry and missions and how, you know, church is messy, right? Like, anytime you're doing life, we're broken human beings. We are going to mess up. We're going to be messy. And we've got to find a way to do that well. And to do it biblically, and to really honor and respect those that are victims in a process, and to honor and respect and guide people that have been affected by fallen leaders or fallen, like, anyone really. But just, it's messy, and know that I am all for doing messy and hard things, but not at the expense of people. I think that's not fair and that's not right. And so I want to encourage you that I think there is hope. There is hope for this movement, or there's hope for doing spiritual gifts with God, with each other, in a way that is respectful and purposeful, and I think that really embodies the whole the Holy Spirit, and just really not letting it be about people, but letting it be about Jesus. And so I think there's a beautiful hope for that. And I just wanted to, like, share a little bit about my journey and my learning to discern, taking it to scripture, having a prayer life that I walk with Jesus every day, practicing discernment, taking wise counsel, if I have a dream or I have a word, I take it to somebody that I trust, like a leader that I trust, and we pray through it together. And knowing what that peace feels like, and I can follow that peace, knowing that it's about really trusting the Lord, and trusting that He will make a way for your good, and not just rushing into something. Like, you've got the time, and when it's not clear, you really need to take it to the Lord. Motherhood often gives me a chance to practice this, to pray for my kids and to discern for my kids. It helps me recognize, like, how big of a thing this is, because if I'm discerning just for me, it's not as big a deal as if I'm trying to discern for our whole family, alongside my husband, and come under his come into submission with him, and have that peace together, and for our whole family. It doesn't just impact me, but it impacts him and our 4 kids and those around us as well. And recognizing the impact and the weight of that has been a big shift in that. So the last thing I really just wanted to say, and to touch on, was that if you have been hurt by the prophetic misuse, I am sorry. I know that it is wrong, and I know that you are hurting, and I am so deeply sorry and so deeply hurt for you. Your caution in trusting people is understandable, but know that you can trust the Lord. And I know that if you're, like, unsure, you can take that to the Lord, and He will hold you gently. He will guide you gently. At the end of the day, you can trust His word. You can stand sure on His promises, and you can stand sure on His character. You know, He does not change. Who He says He is who He is. And that is a beautiful thing at the end of the day. God is not silent anymore as much as some people would like us to believe. He is not silent. But sometimes it takes us getting silent to really hear him, to hear that still small voice, to follow that peace, and to really trust what he is saying. I think it's, you can hear a lot of the mums that I've interviewed and they tell these stories about, I asked, like, how did you discern? Like, how did you figure out that's where God wanted you to go? And a lot of their stories are really like, there was peace. There was confirmation through this or that. We took it to leadership, but there was peace. When I'd pray, I didn't have this worry. I didn't have this concern, but I had a peace about what the Lord was saying. So mostly that's what I wanted to share. And I know this is a bit different to my usual content that I put out, and I thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me share my story and what I learned from seeing Shawn Bolz once and not getting a prophecy. I feel like my story would have been very different if I had been that person that he'd actually given a prophecy to. And I was 19, and so I probably would have just accepted it. Unfortunately, I was not wise. But I want to just leave you with some encouragements and some, like, maybe you could journal some of these things. These are just some questions that I wrote out thinking about how I discern and what I wanted to journal about this whole process. Whose voice can I trust in all of this? How do I go about praying for direction? How do I go about learning how to hear the voice of God? What was the last time that I felt that peace, and what did it feel like? And how can I look for that peace in the future? I want to just sit and read the word slowly and journal it out with the Lord and let him highlight things to me in the word every day, and let him just teach me himself, not through somebody else, and not having to always seek somebody else for validation or for confirmation or for information, but just to take it to the Lord. So thank you if you're still here listening to the end of my story, and I hope this finds you well. If you have found anything good from today's episode, I hope that you would subscribe, follow along, share this with somebody who needs to hear this, and I pray that it's been a blessing. So thanks, everybody. I am going to be coming out with some amazing interviews very soon. I've got another couple lined up for very soon. So stay tuned for hearing some beautiful stories of people, some in Canada, Cambodia, India, you name it. So get excited. There is so much fun to come, and stay tuned. Thanks so much for being here. Bye.